viewers and listeners, to the Health Revolution, the program that shows you how to have a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity. In a sea of fads, we reveal the science-backed strategies that truly work. We explore physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery. These are the keys to an enriched life. Join us for inspiring interviews with champions who conquered life's health challenges, fueling your journey. Are you ready to unlock your potential? To live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest. Together, we're about to change the game, starting now. The information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Welcome, everybody, to the Health Revolution. We are excited that you are joining us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and if you are new to us, just know that it is all things health and wellness, and we certainly love for you to stick around, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button in the manner in which you made your way to us today. So we're excited about today's episode because we're getting into some important information about the body in terms of genetics, in terms of nutrition, in terms of the overall impact on medicine as well. And we've got the right person to talk a little bit more in detail. First, let us show you this. Want you to get to know her. Check this out. Today, we get to meet Bryana Gregory, a compounding pharmacist and genomics consultant who is revolutionizing the way we approach health and wellness. With her expertise in pharmacogenomics and nutrigenomics, Bryana is leading the charge in personalized medicine, in helping individuals understand how their DNA influences their response to nutrition and medication. Specializing in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, immune system balance, and gut restoration, Bryana offers holistic solutions that go beyond the conventional one-size-fits-all approach. Her mission is to simplify and personalize our health journey, making it easier to live our best life. Bryana Gregory, welcome to the show. I am so excited you're joining us today. How are you?
I'm great, Adriana. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yes, and we're diving into it. So tell us a little bit, what does the average person who does not know what pharmacogenomics and nutrigenomics, tell us a little bit, unpack that and explain in detail, what is each of those topics?
Yeah, those are big words, right? Yes. So a lot of people are familiar with the term genetic testing and DNA testing. And essentially that's what it is. These words are just used interchangeable. And genomics testing is type of testing where we look inside the body to understand the information that sits on your DNA that dictates the way that you stay well, the way that you maybe get sick more often than somebody else. And it can help us understand really a personalized path to healing. So when we talk about personalized medicine and taking a root cause approach, using genomic testing is really important because nothing makes you more unique than your DNA, right? So this is a very simple type of test to help us understand exactly the most personalized way to heal and create a regimen that you can actually stick with, which is so important in today's day and age.
Now, I always like to do this in the very beginning of the show. I always like for guests to get to know, or the viewers to get to know the guests a little bit more. How did you get involved in nutrigenomics and all that implies?
Right. So I am a pharmacist, as you mentioned, and I went through conventional training, just like every other pharmacist, PharmD does. And through that doctorate program, I happened to stumble upon a research opportunity in my second year of school. And I had lost my dad to prostate cancer about 5 years previous to that. And so cancer was top of mind for me, right? If anyone has had cancer or been impacted, which most of us have, either directly or indirectly, you understand what a complicated and very heavy diagnosis that can be. So for me, having lost a family member to that, it was really tough and it hit home for me. So I remember sitting in one of my pharmacogenomics classes actually and listening to how interesting this information was about the way that certain people respond to various medications. In this particular class, we were talking about cancer medications and how their outcomes actually are in part dictated by their genes, which makes sense, right? So we talk about metabolism a lot in the realm of food, but there's also metabolism of drugs too. So this is why some people, let's say, get much better pain resolution from a certain medication where others don't. And that's kind of the overarching understanding of what pharmacogenomics is. But this really struck home for me. So I approached my professor. I said, "Hey, I want to learn more about this." He said, "I actually have a head research opportunity open. Would you like to take it?" I said, "Yes," before he even finished his sentence. I thought that that would be so cool. So I spent the next 2.5 years tuning into that, doing research in the area of pharmacogenomics, and started getting publications, started really diving into how our genes impact the way that we respond to cancer medications. And in this particular case, it was actually for breast cancer patients. So regardless of what type of cancer it is, we really do metabolize medications differently, whether we're man, whether we're woman, whether we have breast cancer or prostate cancer or whatever that might be, our genes do actually dictate our response. So needless to say, I was hooked after that because I started to understand the impact of that in the laboratory, in the research, in the publications. And now fast forward, gosh, we're almost to 10 years now. I see it in my day-to-day practice of how we speak about personalized medicine, but often it's not truly delivered. And I'm sure a lot of people can understand how that resonates with them. And like most people, I have my own personal story about being bounced around the medical system. And so to me personally, personalization is really the only way to truly heal instead of having all of these failed attempts and feeling like you're, kind of getting lost in the crevices, right?
So, how far back DNA studies go? Was there ever a time that in society's timeline where it really gained traction, where we were starting to look at this way more than ever before?
Roughly a decade ago, as the human genome began to be sequenced and was sequenced successfully, and it started to become more of an affordable option to integrate into the treatment plan. A lot of people ask me, well, why haven't I heard of this? Why doesn't my doctor just do this? If it's so personalized, why isn't everyone doing this? But if people aren't talking about it, it's not going to be mainstream, right? At one point years ago, taking a lab test like that blood draw that you take when you go into the doctor wasn't mainstream until they started utilizing that routinely as a marker for health or how to improve, certain lifestyle techniques or medications or supplements, right? So just like anything, when there is a new technology available, it's very expensive. And one of the beauties of genomic testing is, for one, it's become a lot more affordable. I mean, much more affordable to patients. And there are direct to consumer options, which these are the 23andMe and the ancestry.com, which is not the same as what I do. Those are ancestry tests. And if anyone's done that, they will know that you'll get some health precaution information on there, but that's very different than what I offer, which is looking at the wellness side and how to really tailor a plan for you that helps you meet your wellness goals, because that's going to look different for everybody, right?
So with this, I'm totally fascinated about this because you're right that this is recent. This is not something that has been around for a period of time. So what are some trends that you're noticing now? When I say trends, obviously there are some exceptions to the rule and not everybody might fall into this. But as you started studying this, what were some trends that were surprising to you that maybe the rest of us don't really know or we've yet to know?
So specifically in nutrigenomics, which is looking at how the genes impact our nutrition, or the nutrients that we pull from either foods or supplements, which are both different avenues of nutrition, one aspect that I've noticed is particular vitamin deficiencies. So this is also an area that is being more talked about and getting uncovered. And I'm glad about that, about the nutrient deficiencies present in the modern diet, specifically the modern American diet or the standard American diet, the MAD diet or the SAD diet, which it is a sad diet.
Mad or sad?
We've been doing so much better. But what I find is that when I run a genomics test on a patient, they almost always are lacking. Magnesium is a big one. And to clarify, this is not a live test. Like when you go in and you get a blood draw, you're looking at those exact levels right then. When we look at a genomics test, one of the neat aspects of it is you only have to do it once because you are born and you die with the same DNA. It does not change.
That's
Now,
good to know, because the first thing that would come to mind is like, oh, you would have to get repeated testing to see what it
right.
looks like on an ongoing basis. But you're saying no, that's not the case.
Right, exactly. So much like a laboratory test, different panels can be ran, but the panel just depends on what we're trying to look at. If we're trying to look at how you metabolize hormones, we might run a hormone panel. If we're looking specifically at nutrition and particular foods, we'll run a panel that's more guided towards those specific foods. But you only ever have to do those panels once. And there's many panels that are extremely comprehensive so that you don't have to keep going back. But typically my patients will just do one or two panels and then that's it. And we use that information to build off of what we found. Now, for those that are thinking, well, haven't I heard that you can actually change the expression of your genes? Yes, you can. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So when I say I look at a test and I see that someone has the opportunity to improve their magnesium levels, it's because based on their DNA, we can see that they need more supplementation. So not only is it important to be sure that this particular person is eating foods that are, let's say, rich in magnesium, but also that they're supplementing magnesium more than someone that didn't have that variation on their test would need. So usually magnesium is a big deal. And why I really like to focus here is because you'd be hard pressed to find someone that actually wasn't magnesium deficient in some regard. And I think it's important to talk here for a moment because there's so many different diagnoses that I think can actually really be helped as far as symptoms go with a simple supplementation of magnesium.
So you bring up a good point about that. So, and I agree. I remember reading about, especially women as we get older, that's one area where we're notoriously deficient in affecting sleep and so many other areas. And so I'm fascinated by leaving an impact on the markers as though we could. So we're able to have those numbers evolve across time. So you've seen where change can be? How does that work to be able to monitor that? And then what have you noticed in the case of magnesium that's been most profound in doing so?
So a lot of people will come to me because they have the complaint of anxiety or insomnia. Those are two really big ones, right? We hear that all the time. So by simple supplementation of magnesium, we can oftentimes improve those symptoms largely. Even migraine headaches is another big one. So when you talk about women, I mean, we are all over the board when it comes to hormones, right? We fluctuate all the time. Something's changing. So magnesium can be a really nice supplement to help to combat the severity of some of these symptoms that we experience. And magnesium can help to improve sleep. It can help to manage the mood. And so when we talk about also stabilizing the gene expression, or I like to say the way they behave, I mean, genes are either kind of behaving or misbehaving, but we want them to behave, right? So if we give the DNA, we give the body back the nutrients that it needs, then they'll behave. So it keeps those genes behaving appropriately throughout the duration of taking these supplements. And then as a beautiful side benefit, we get resolution of some of these symptoms like gut issues or insomnia or anxiety, right? Does that make sense?
It does. Now that begs a question from me that if so now this is not permanent change, would you say? So then the change would occur with ongoing inclusion of foods that are magnesium rich and then in addition to supplementation, right? So then if say a person is in that example and they stop doing the things, then the markers, then the genes would misbehave, right?
Yes, theoretically, yes. And so, as we're making changes based on what we find in a genomic test, we're also addressing the root cause. It's never just one thing that's going on. But the good news is, it's usually not something that is so off the wall. It's usually something that's sitting there and staring us right in the face. It's something that we're doing every day. That's why I like to focus on foods, because we have to eat every day. So, if we look first at what is going in, then we can make some changes there that create long lasting benefits. And then the goal is always to decrease the amount of supplementation we need, to decrease the amount of medications that we need so that we can survive as a self sufficient being. We are self sufficient, but we live in very, very toxic environments. There's no way around that. You know, we are talking about the Bluetooths and the internet connections and the smog. I mean, these are all toxins in one way, shape, or form to the body, which that's undeniable. So, in my opinion, the further that we advance technologically, unfortunately, we become, existent in these more toxic environments. So we have to put more products in us that detoxify us. And I think that's a big misunderstanding for a lot of people, or they don't really understand why supplementation is important. But when you've put yourself in this type of environment, which we call the world, right? Just society that we live in, it's unavoidable. So we have to counteract that with antioxidants to support how the body functions. One of the reasons why antioxidants are important is if we have a build up of products that are constantly oxidizing in the body and causing breakdown of tissues, then what happens? We don't start feeling well. That's a very high level explanation of the tissues breaking down, but also it leaves opportunity for cancer to grow, for inflammation to occur. And those are not things that we want to happen. So we're always trying to approach our wellness through the lens of prevention.
So what do you notice is a bigger culprit in our overall food intake in being well versed in this area and noticing the different changes and just paying attention to how the body's impacted by what we put in? What are the bigger culprits that we need to be aware of that maybe we already know of, but we don't recognize that they are a big culprit?
You ask a very good question, and I'm glad that you did, because we don't talk about this enough, but that's why we're here today, right? So one would definitely be magnesium. When we have such substantial crop turnover to fulfill and feed such a large society, of course, that becomes rooted in convenience. And so the foods become magnesium depleted because the soil is no longer as magnesium rich because there's such a high turnover. So we've talked about magnesium. The other aspect of nutrition that, gosh, I want every parent to hear this is folate. So when we think of fortified foods or foods that are enriched with folate, for example, that really can cause a lot of behavioral issues and physical issues and neurological issues, particularly in children. If the children don't have the capability to methylate or break down the folate. So there are foods that that naturally have folate present in them. Green leafy vegetables are just, one example of that. But for one, we have to have folate in our body to function. It's very important for cellular function, for energy, just to name a few. But we can't get all the folate through our diet and break it down to the active form if the genes don't support that action. So if you hear about the MTHFR gene, a lot of people are kind of hearing the buzz around that. What's important about that is that particular gene is important for methylation or breaking down folate. So the powers that be, whoever decides that foods are going to be, fortified. I don't know who decides that, but a committee of people that come together and decide this is what we're going to do. That's not always a great idea if someone doesn't have the right genes to actually break down the folate in the food, especially if it's fortified, which means that it's packed full of a form that you cannot break down. So if you can't break it down, what's it going to do? It's going to build up. And when things build up and they're not eliminated from the body, that's viewed as a toxin in the body. So that's why we get this neurotoxic effect or this lethargy or fatigue, because the body doesn't pull the nutrients that it needs from the food. And two, it's getting that toxic buildup. So you can see how it's kind of a 1-2 punch, especially for the kiddos who are eating fortified processed foods with dyes and sugars. And it says fortified on the box. Fortified foods are usually your cereals or your breads, your grains, like things like that. Convenience foods.
This is pretty powerful. Yeah, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back. We're going to continue where we left off. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fit Bites with me, Adriana. Did you know that February is Heart Health Month? It's the perfect time to focus on keeping our hearts strong and healthy. So let's dive into some proactive steps we can take to be heart healthy. So first up is your food intake. Sometimes people say diet. I like to say food intake. Incorporate heart-friendly foods like fatty fish, rich in omega-3s, plenty of fruits and veggies, whole grains, and nuts. Now, these foods not only taste great, but they also do wonders for your heart. So next, get moving. Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise each week. Now, whether it's walking, cycling, or dancing, find an activity that you enjoy and you make it a part of your overall routine. Now, don't forget to monitor your numbers. Keep an eye on your blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and blood sugar. Regular checkups are key to catching any issues early. And lastly, manage stress. We all feel it from time to time. Take time for yourself, practice mindfulness, and ensure that you're getting enough sleep. A happy heart is a healthy heart. So let's take these steps to help our heart and make February the start of a heart healthy year. Now stay tuned for more Fit Bites, and let's keep our hearts beating strong.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. We are honored to spend some time with Bryana Gregory. She is a genomics consultant and pharmacist, and she is well-versed in the topic that we are talking about today. That's the power of DNA and how to harness better health. So, Bryana, to delve into some really fascinating information. I want to pick up where we left off. You were talking about how folate is something we don't really dive into. Maybe we as a society don't really understand and don't see how the overall impact, especially on our kids, has in terms of their mental health, in terms of clarity, in terms of cognitive function, all of the things. And so what surprised you the most about understanding, say, something like how folate can really, if it's not handled the right way, how this could really skew sideways, so to speak?
Well, if we're not talking about it in society, then we have this remaining misconception of really what nutrition is, right? If we think about it in very simple terms, very ancestral terms, we only need food, real food, to go in our body to sufficiently nourish us. And it still boggles my mind, patient after patient that I meet with, how there is still a gaping misunderstanding of what real nutrition is. And that's not to, say anything about the education level of the person. I want to make that very clear, because it's nobody's fault, nor is a lack of health and wellness information, because just like myself, I was trained conventionally. I wasn't trained in how to make people well, right? So there's a breakdown in the system there. So it's kind of always an education process, and I'm always constantly learning about new changes, not only in the field of genomics but in the field of nutrition, because there's always new information coming out. But when we talk about folate, we really need to understand actually how simple that can be to get through the diet, but that the majority of people can't break it down. So when we talk about this MTHFR gene, everyone has the genes. Sometimes they'll call it a SNP, which is SNP. That's a single nucleotide polymorphism. I like to say variation. It's basically just a change. When we look at your results and there's a variation than what we expect to see, then we just course correct for it. So if that enzyme function is not as strong in one person's body as the other, then we need to support it. How do we support it? We support it through lifestyle changes. We support it through supplementation, so that we give the body back what it needs to allow that enzyme to function like it should. And would you believe that the majority of the population across the entire globe has a variation at this MTHFR gene, and yet our foods are still jam-packed and fortified with a type of folate that is not digestible? Tell me about that.
Well, that's shocking, and what isn't as shocking is the closer the timeline that we look at from the food industry. And I will diplomatically say, to some extent, that things started to shift as society was entering the 1970s, and just what the evolvement of faster, more convenient food meant, and the impression that the food industry was making on society. Hey, this is more convenient. Hey, you need this, or hey, this is how you can have a quick meal. And then it seemed the more recent change seemed to be at that point in time. Would you say that falls in line with what all that you studied in terms of the impact on the body?
100%. Absolutely. And we as in society tends to accept information that is just given to us or presented to us in let's say a research fashion. But I always like to say trust and verify, right? I am a researcher. I have a researcher mind by nature, and I love to dig into the literature. I can sit there and I can read probably the most boring set of literature to somebody else all day, and it'll keep me wide awake because I love that stuff. But what I want people to hear and know is, just because you see a study is published or something like that, don't just take it for face value. You should also be putting your researcher hat on too. And not that you have to be fully versed in how to pull apart a medical article, but please find someone to pull on your team that can help you understand that.
And I will say that the research articles, they can be a little bit of a bear to sort through, or some of the statistics and how they explain the setup for the actual research. But I think you are right that it's not something that's enticing to delve into, but very important that we understand how research continues to evolve.
Right. No, it's really important. And a lot of the studies that have been published, the data may have been skewed, or it's important to always look at those endpoints. What are the primary and secondary endpoints? Meaning, what was the whole point of the study? Why did they even do it? And so just because something is said as quote unquote efficacious, what does that mean? It's efficacious how? Does it actually stop someone from getting a disease? Does it decrease how many people die from the disease if they're given XYZ medication or make XYZ lifestyle change, that type of thing? It's important to have a good grasp on the lens that we're actually looking through. So yes, I agree with you that the changes in the food industry have largely driven chronic illness. Illness, disease starts in the gut, right? And I think more people are hearing that explanation, which is great because we're talking more about gut health. But if you can find someone to, again, pull in on your healthcare team to guide you towards gut health, you will be conquering a lot of the challenges that you're currently experiencing symptom-wise, because I see that over and over and over again. And one of the neat tools that we can use in genomics testing is, again, nutrigenomics, where we look at how the body responds to certain foods. Because I'm a living testament to this. I grew up eating very healthy. I've always eaten very healthy, but it doesn't mean you're eating the right foods for your body. I mean, just in the last year, 12 to 18 months, I've made some not dramatic changes in my nutrition, little changes, but they've made dramatic changes in my body. So for example, taking out foods, and this is for me personally, based on my DNA test. I'm not telling everyone to pull this out of their diet. Spinach, cinnamon, avocados, and tomatoes have been 4 big ones for me. All healthy, right? I mean, why wouldn't you throw all that in a smoothie and just slurp it down? Well, that might be fine for somebody, but it's not fine for me. So I actually, following my DNA test, was able to shed 25 pounds, which was a lot of bloat, a lot of inflammation, which led to a lot of hormone dysregulation. And once I was able to course correct, now I have more energy than I have in literally decades. So I believe in it so much because of that.
and that's incredible. First of all, congratulations for, for that change happening for you. Is there a difference, or what's the difference between nutrigenomics, the testing, and then allergy testing? Is it not the same? Just for anyone who's watching, who's like, well, what if I'm, what's the difference between the two?
So allergy testing is usually done a couple of different ways. You can either take it through blood or through kind of a skin type of test based on what you're trying to see if you're allergic to. But again, that's what I refer to as a point in time test. So if you go in today and you take an allergy test, it's going to tell us what you're allergic to today. And I do want to point out that these food sensitivity or food allergy tests, when we talk about an allergy, just to pull that apart for a second, yes. If you have, let's say, like a peanut allergy, which is a very common one that people know about, if someone needs an EpiPen or they have to go to the hospital directly after that, that's a legitimate food allergy. That person needs to be staying away from it. It doesn't mean that they can't be desensitized to the point where they can't one day eat it, but that's an extreme. Let's talk about the food sensitivity test, because I think that's kind of where you're going with that too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I've taken food sensitivity tests in the past, and what I experienced is very similar to what a lot of people do. You go in, you're excited, you take the test, you get your results, you get it back, and it's basically a novel of things you can't eat. And you say, now what? So typically what shows up on the test is everything you do eat. So that's telling us what? Do you think that's just a consequence? No, it's not. What happens usually is we get something called leaky gut, which is back to the previous conversation about tissue breakdown. We get tissue breakdown in the wall or our gut lining. And when that happens, we get an unfavorable type of nutrient exchange between what's supposed to be staying in the gut and it gets out into the blood. Now, the body's very smart. Its main job is to keep us alive. So if something gets into the blood that's not supposed to be there, it goes boom, and tags it as a foreign body or an offender or something like that. And when it tags it, that's essentially how an allergy is formed, because it's telling your body to react to it in a way to defend against it or to get it out. So, for example, let's say that someone eats a lot of nuts, and that's a really great snack that they like. Great, fine. That's healthy, wonderful. Let's say, though, that they've gone through a year of extreme stress, trauma, divorce, losing a job. These are just examples. So much stress, this person is really just, their health is down in the dumps. That inflammation, which is long-lasting inflammation, is the body's reaction to stress, will break down tissues, physically break down tissues. So now we've had this maybe traumatic series of events leading to inflammation, leading to leakage of food particles from the gut out into the blood. Now we have a food allergy. See how easy it is to get there? So if we heal the gut, we can actually turn some of those food sensitivities around. Isn't that a beautiful thing? It's not a death sentence.
It is fantastic. Now I'm curious, how do you approach gut restoration with all that you do with genomics and nutrigenomics?
So typically I look at the inflammation first. So one of the first changes that will be made is food elimination. So pulling out certain foods that we know bother us, we know we shouldn't be eating, but we don't stop. So let's take away the obvious ones. Then let's also take away foods that are high in yeast. So when we think about yeast, we might think of two things, either baking with yeast or really a woman having a yeast infection. Two very common, reasons that we talk about yeast. Now, what probably a lot of people don't understand or realize is that we all have yeast in our body all the time. And that's actually natural. We have a large amount of yeast, specifically from the mouth all the way down to the anus. So it's one continual tract, right? And we talk about the microbiome, we talk about probiotics and balance and all these things, but what the heck does that really mean? Well, there's a lot of stuff coexisting in its own little ecosystem, not just in the gut, but in the mouth and the colon and everywhere in between. However, again, when we get stressed, when we have inflammation, when our diet is poor, then we can get something referred to as an opportunistic infection. And that's when something that's naturally present in the body finds that the other little guys that it's living in there with are feeling a little bit down, a little bit weaker today. And it says, oh, there's an opportunity for me to overgrow and replicate more. And so when this type of yeast overgrows, that's why we have a yeast infection. So it's not that we got infected by ingesting yeast. The yeast has been there the whole time, but now it's overgrown. So the point is, it's really important to get that excess yeast out. So we'll do a yeast cleanse. And that's partially by removing foods that are high in yeast, because of course that would just be perpetuating the problem. And then also giving some antifungal type products, like oral products, like nystatin is a really common one that will help to wipe out the excess yeast overgrowth in the gut to take the pressure off the yeast. This is where we address the bloating, which is what a lot of people complain about. And they think maybe they're just overweight, and they might be, but a lot of that could be due to excess bloating that's occurring in the abdominal region. Also having belching or gas or abdominal cramping. Those are all signs of candida overgrowth, or this yeast overgrowth, having a yeast infection essentially in the gut. So by removing that, we eliminate a lot of those symptoms, and then we replenish. So we have to deplete the gut of what's been overgrown in there that we don't want, and then we replenish it with the probiotics and with the nourishing foods that will actually heal the gut lining rather than break it down. So it's a process.
It's a process, and this is incredible. I want to continue the conversation. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Thank you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
And now we want to give special thanks to Biomed Mobile IV for sponsoring the health revolution. Biomed Mobile IV is Colorado's top mobile IV therapy service, servicing throughout the state of Colorado. They offer an array of vitamins and above and beyond safety preparation. Biomed Mobile IV, your dedication to health and wellness is exactly what our show is all about. And we thank you for your support. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. We've been having a fascinating conversation with our guest today, Bryana Gregory, genomics consultant, and she's also a pharmacist. And we were talking about the power of DNA, how to harness better health, and all that that implies. And before the break, Bryana, you were getting into such a fascinating deep dive on gut restoration, gut health. How much of society doesn't recognize the importance? How underutilized are you seeing the approach to gut health be today?
It's the most overlooked issue. I spent a lot of time in physicians' offices educating them on certain types of compounded medications to integrate into their practice. So typically hormones, like you were talking about, these are more natural type of approaches to replenishing what the body's become deficient in. We're not talking about mainstream medications here, but I have to be in the office to understand what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're treating. And it is shocking to me that physicians that have been in practice for decades do not even look at the gut. Do not even look. The patient will say, I was never asked about my diet. No one ever asked me that. A lot of times I'll be counseling a patient on the phone and I will ask them a few questions about their diet. They say, well, why has no one ever asked me this before? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question, but I feel like if a question is answered twice, fine. But if it was never answered, then that's doing a big disservice to the patient. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people find themselves in that situation. And, I was one of those people too. I wasn't asked about my diet when I was going through the medical system and trying to find treatment for some things I had going on myself. So, if you're hearing this, you're not alone, because I was there too. And a lot of people have been and are right now.
Wow. So what's been the dialogue like with doctors and specialists along the way? Are you noticed? Is there any type of pushback? Is there maybe hesitancy, but then like, what in the heck are you talking about type of response? What are you noticing when you talk to doctors and specialists today?
It's usually a deer in the headlights for starters, and then followed by the question, well, what do you mean I should look at the gut? So, we talk about foods, of course, and I like to give even physicians just a few things to integrate starting Monday morning, right? Here's 1 or 2 medications compounded in a clean formulation that's not going to be bothersome to your patient. And this may give them symptom resolution 50%. I don't know, I'm making up a number, but that's significant, right? Rather than someone being on 4 different medications to help heal their gut or their IBS or abdominal cramping or whatever it might be, right? I mean, let's get to the root cause of what's going on. It doesn't have to be something elaborate. So we talk about that. And then I also get a lot of questions from physicians directly, actually, saying, do you have any recommendations for medications or any recommendations in general to help address the person that has tried everything, but they're coming to me and they're telling me that they just can't lose weight? And I say, yes, that would be nutrigenomics testing. So I've had some really cool stories from patients who have come to me being referred by an outside physician, and we've gone through the testing together. And I think one of the biggest things for someone who undergoes this type of testing is the light bulb that goes off. And for one, it's a sense of responsibility of how they can take charge of their health and their nutrition. But it also kind of lifts this burden that a lot of people have, where they feel like they can't lose weight. Like they go to the gym, they eat all the right foods, but they still can't. Something's defective with their body. Say nothing's defective with your body. We just haven't figured out how to optimize it yet. And then when we start optimizing it and we give your body what it needs, you're no longer fighting an uphill battle. You're coming equipped with everything you need to remain healthy, right? And so I think that's really important for people because they feel encouraged rather than discouraged. And that's one of the things I love the most about what I do, is seeing that light bulb go off and then they feel encouraged about their wellness and actually excited about the changes that they're making.
Can you share a success story with someone who had a profound situation going on with their health, where things was just, it was so undeniably big of a change that their life improved in such by leaps and bounds through nutrigenomics testing?
Yeah. So something that's really been coming up a lot, probably in the past few years, is something called mast cell activation syndrome. And boy, could we talk for a whole day about this. But to give an overlying understanding, it's a type of immune cell in the body that really just tries to keep us safe from harm. But when we have a hard time shutting off that cell, then we have a lot of different reactions that we don't want. So I'm talking about a lady that came to me and she had a lot of bloating, a lot of weight gain. She didn't realize a lot of what was going on with her foods was causing the blister on her eyes, the swelling of her head so much she couldn't fit her glasses over her head some days. She would be bedbound. I mean, the list literally goes on forever. And we did a nutrigenomics test on her, and she no longer breaks out in hives. She has energy again. She feels encouraged about her new healthcare plan. She understands how to manage her health in a way that she doesn't have a lot of high histamine type foods in her diet, which were causing these flares on her faces. So her face, so she wouldn't go out. I mean, she was embarrassed by the way that she looked. She wouldn't be around people. Anytime she was in the heat, that would further exacerbate her rash. So she had a lot going on. But with losing, I mean, in the first month or two, I think she had about 10 to 15 pounds weight loss, which was really good. But I think most importantly, it was some of the aesthetic, resolution that was really great too, because it's all connected, right? So we kind of hit on a lot of different symptoms for her that simply by looking at the nutrigenomics test, that's the only one we did, which looks at almost 600 different types of foods and beverages, gave her this resolution. So now she can go out. She can actually go out to eat with her husband, which that's a big win. That's something you and I might take for granted, but that's a really big win.
That's incredible. That is congrats to her for sure.
Yes.
Now, I know we've got a little time before we go to our next break, but I wanted to ask you, how does one start the approach of seeking nutrigenomics testing?
So you'll see on the internet, there's a lot of different options out there. And when we talk about the service that I provide, it is all personalized. You meet with me. So if you want to meet with me, then go to my website and schedule a free consultation, because I want to be sure that we're on the same page with what we're trying to achieve. We're not going to go further down the line if we're not on the same page. So I want to be sure I have a good understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve and change in your wellness. And then we talk about what types of genomic panels to test and go from there. And then you get the full personalized plan. So all of these little options are different. I think that there's a lot of direct to consumer options, but I think it's important to have something always that's personalized for you. Otherwise, why would you be seeking a personalized treatment?
That makes a lot of sense. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this.
Greetings, Greetings, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli, host of Energize You TV, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Go to Fresh Takes right here on E360 and get Reikified and energized today.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Bryana Gregory, she is quite knowledgeable in genomics testing. She's a genomics consultant. She's also a pharmacist, and we've been talking about the power of DNA. Bryana, where can viewers find you on the internet and beyond?
So at my website is an excellent place to connect with me. It talks more about my journey, how I got here, the services that I provide. So that's bryana-gregory.com. And you can just send me a note through my website. We can chat about what it is that you like, and you can see more about the services and the approach I take, that it's not a Band-Aid approach, but it's personalized and it's a root cause approach. And then also I'm quite active on Instagram as well. I like that because I can actually show people what I do and talk about the success stories that I have as well. And so also send me a note through there. You'll see more about how the process works, the benefits that you get from the testing, and I welcome any questions. The whole point of having this conversation today, right, is to educate and to learn, but to open up the conversation around genomics, because I no longer want it to be something that people haven't heard about, but instead a buzz in common conversation, and for people to know that they have access to it no matter who they are.
And what are you most excited about in terms of the advancements of genomics?
I think that the more that the technology develops, the more information that we have, the more people that test, the more we can actually trend what the responses are of certain genes. So that's how this information is developed in the first place. We have to trend data. We have to understand from what patients have experienced what a certain variation at a certain part in the DNA means and how that translates to, nutrition or metabolism. So as time goes on, we learn more and more, and the treatment plan, the wellness plan just gets more and more personalized.
This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm fascinated with everything that you've said, and I wish we could talk longer, but we are out of time. Bryana Gregory, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time, energy, input, and the receipts that you bring, for sure.
It's a pleasure, Adriana. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And for all of you that are tuning in and watching, please do not forget that our website, of course, you can find us on the internet at thehealthrevolutiontv.com. If you can subscribe to our newsletter that we have. Also, if you want to share any show input ideas, any topics you want to see us cover so that we can do so, please feel free to do so. And of course, if you want a quick as the crow flies to get to our website, there's our QR code at the corner of your screen. And then, as always, we are on E360, where you can find us. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Please do not forget to subscribe. And that is all the time that we have today. Until next time, of course, you all take care. We will see you soon.